Hello everybody, I'm Verdi and welcome to the first episode from my new series, Kota Nerang. Kota Nerang, meaning Bright City, will be a metropolis set in Malaysia, heavily inspired by Kuala Lumpur, just scaled down to fit on the map. I won't be rebuilding KL street by street, but rather I will try to pick the most interesting things from it, rebuild those and fill in the rest using my own creativity. And yes, I decided to torture myself and switch to left-hand traffic. As the map for this, I'm using my own one. You can find it on PDX mods under the name KL Miniaturized. I made it from a height map of Kuala Lumpur and then just pulled the seaway closer to the mountains than it is in real life, so that I can fit a port on it while also having the natural barrier of mountains on the other side. But that would be enough for the intro. Let's start building. And what's a better way to start than by rebuilding probably the most iconic building in Kuala Lumpur, and therefore whole of Malaysia, the Petronas Towers. The first step, like with all of these big projects, is to clear the land of all trees and flatten all of the tiny hills that Malaysia is full of. Nothing is really flat here. After that, we can measure some things out and start splicing hundreds of buildings and props to form the iconic shape. So let's put on a time lapse during which I can tell you something about this marvel of architecture and engineering. The Petronas Towers, finished in 1996, are with their 452 meters the tallest twin towers in the world, and up until 2004, when surpassed by Taipei 101, they were also the tallest overall skyscraper in the world, although by a technicality. Before, the tallest building was the Sears Tower in Chicago, which is its highest floor and roof much higher than the roof of Petronas Towers. However, Petronas have an unremovable spire that makes it count towards the building height, unlike the antennas on the Sears Tower, which due to the higher roof surpassed even the height of the Petronas Tower's spire. In-game, I'm building them in a 1:1 scale to make them truly dominant on the city's skyline. The height I'm measuring with elevated rows, as I found that is the most accurate method. The Petronas Towers were designed by Cesar Pelli in the postmodern style popular in the 90s and inspired by Islamic art. For example, the shape of the two overlapping squares resembles the Islamic symbol Rub al-Hisb, albeit with circular sectors added to meet the floor requirements. The towers are also notable for their construction process. To this day, they hold the record for the deepest foundations with their 104 concrete piles bored 60 to 114 meters into the ground. To meet the government's requirement to have the towers finished in 6 years, 2 construction consortia had to be hired, one for each tower. The efforts were successful, as the towers were finished in just 3 years after construction began. It however took for some reason another 3.5 years for the Prime Minister to officially open them. But let's get back to the game. Here you can see me measuring the heights with the rows to ensure that I get the proportions right. To position all of the buildings precisely where they need to be, I'm using the transform tool. It is a killer feature. Something like this wouldn't be possible without it at all. Anyway, the main shape of the tower is pretty much complete, so after doing some final adjustments to get the proportions right, we can move on to the roof. That I will be making aside and moving it onto the tower once finished, because it is much harder to do precise work in height. I'm making the roof mainly out of horizontal pillars because they offer a great degree of flexibility and they even have quite a good color. Similarly to the rest of the tower, the roof has a step design and follows the shape of 2 overlapping squares with circular sections in between them. Those circular sections were quite tricky here. For the bottom 2 steps, I used battery upgrades from the wind turbine, for the third I used root pillars, and for the fourth dog park tubes. I basically winged this without any proper measuring, so sometimes it just didn't fit, and I had to make some adjustments. That's probably what caused the build time of roughly 4 hours for just this roof. Overall, it took me just under 12 hours to finish the towers, and surprisingly with no crashes. The game is finally becoming stable. This is the final step of the roof, so after moving it to its proper place and doing some adjustments to the overall roof's height, it was way off, we have a rough shape of the roof complete. But that doesn't mean that we are done. The steps right now are too abrupt and junky looking, so we need to smooth them out and cover up that junk. That took me quite a while and it was full of trial and error, so I'll skip it and show you the result. But now let's do the spire. It was actually quite hard to find a good asset for that, but I eventually settled on this chimney. By far the hardest part of the spire were the walls. IRL, there is a large sphere at the bottom of the spire and a smaller one on top, and I really wanted to include those in the build, but there simply are not any spherical assets in the game, so I had to create my own. For the larger bottom sphere I ended up using gas heaters, and for the smaller one some chimneys. To make a sphere like this, you just copy the position of one of the gas heaters, paste it to some other one and rotate it by a couple degrees. I'm using 15. If you do that for all axes, you get this frame of the sphere. From there you can just fill in the rest using the same technique. The only problem with these spheres that I didn't anticipate is that they disappear early when zooming out, since they are made of small props, so they are actually not visible from most angles. But there is no way I know of to fix them, so I guess I'll just have to live with it. After finishing the sphere, I placed it onto the roof and built the smaller one to place it on top of the spire. It just is a little too small, because there just aren't any suitable assets in between the gas heaters and these chimneys. Then I tried to place the roof on top of the tower. And you remember when I said that I basically winged the roof without any proper measuring? So, yeah, it didn't fit. So back to the ground and resizing. Luckily it was quite easy since I had the bottom part conical, so resizing it was just a matter of making it straight. So I tried seating it again, and that time it fit perfectly. And with that, the first tower is almost finished. The only thing remaining are the circular segments in the main structure. I left them out earlier, because I didn't know how to make them, and figured I could just return to them later, and that later is now. I found this Chinese office that after recoloring fits pretty well, so let's make the circular bits out of it so that we can call the first tower finished. To get rid of the texture fighting when the buildings overlap, I just moved the upper one by a millimeter to the back. That is enough to calm down the textures while not being visible at all. So the first tower is complete, and we can move on to copying it to make the second one. Copy-paste would be a godsend here, but the Ctrl-C mode unfortunately broke after one of the updates and is no longer maintained, so you'll have to do without it. Probably the fastest way to copy something without actually having a copy feature is to place all the required pieces on the side and then select one of the original pieces, copy its position, paste it onto the new one and move it out of the way. Make sure you're using global chords. Then just repeat one by one until you have the whole thing. It's also interesting to see how many buildings go into this now that they are all laid out like this. And repeating this simple process over and over, also for the roof, the second tower is almost done. The only thing that's missing is the spheres, which can't be copied like this, because the assets there are just unselectable. So I needed to make them from scratch, just like the first ones. That took quite a bit of time, but I think it was worth it. Now the most nerve-wracking part, moving it in place. This is more than 500 assets, and Move It doesn't like doing that much at once, but fortunately it didn't crash. With both towers standing where they are supposed to, it's time for one of the most important things that make Petronas towers what they are, the sky bridge. For this, I used the North American train cars, as they have windows and they are this nice silver color just like the Petronas towers. I'm making the sky bridge at this joint between the buildings from which the tower is built from, because it is like a natural place to put it, and by complete chance it is 170 meters high, which is the real life height of it. Now looking at it, isn't there something just a little off? Of course there is. The towers are too far apart, so I redid the measurements and moved them closer to each other. Much better. For the support, I ended up using these pedestrian bridge pillars, since they are the perfect width and are easy to work with. There is no need to precisely stitch many assets together. And I almost forgot there are these circular sticky outy bits that I need to add before calling the towers finished. But there are no circular assets of the desired size, so you know what time it is. It's splicing time. For this, I'm using a Chinese office from the same set as the one I used for the circular bits on the main towers, just a smaller version. It is not a perfect circle and there are some gaps, but it's unnoticeable if you don't look at it directly from the top. With this addition, the towers are finished, and I can move on to building the entrance and shopping mall that will be below. The entrance I made quite simple here, because my original plan was just too complex, but I wasn't happy with it. So I ended up going back to the original plan later in the video and redid the whole thing. In real life, there is a Surya KLCC mall, and at least from the outside, it looks kind of unremarkable with its beige tiled walls. So I'll go for something similar with this Chinese mall. I'll just stack two on top of each other to make it a bit more substantial. Now it's time to fill in this gap. I will build another skyscraper here inspired by the one that's there in real life. To build it, I'm using the same buildings as for the Petronas towers. It is just the best building to work with. It's small, has flat roof, is uniform width, and has a nice facade. On the other side, I also mimicked the real world a bit. I made the base of the tower from some Chinese offices, and for the tower I went for a much easier approach. Didn't build anything custom this time, and just plopped some none other than Chinese office. Chinese offices are just the best. I'll end up placing them everywhere. And before moving on to the access road network, I made this one slimmer. It was just too bulky. Now I have all of the buildings finished, so it's time for building the access road network. It might at the first glance seem a bit overkill, but it's very much needed, because Kota Nerang will be just like Kuala Lumpur despite its density, quite car-centric, and there will be thousands of parking spaces under these buildings once I make this functional in some of the future episodes. It also rains a lot in Malaysia, so if you have some important guests, you can't have them walking anywhere without a roof. That is why the majority of buildings have access roads going right to their doors and they have roofs over them. For the access roads, I use my custom road builder roads. They are similar to alleys. They just have narrower shoulders and the shoulders are made of empty lanes, so that street lights don't spawn there and people can't walk there. I don't want people to walk on a narrow shoulder of an access road, if there is a wide sidewalk or plaza next to it. For the next bit, I forgot to hit record or lost the footage, but I finished majority of the access roads and built this art deco-ish building here. The real one that's there is a bit taller and thicker, but I think this one looks good too. All the buildings are finished and the roads laid down, so we are slowly getting into the detailing part of the video. The first thing I'm doing here is covering the shopping mall roof with horizontal pillars to hide all of the weird stuff caused by splicing many buildings together in different angles. Next are the roofs above entrances I talked about earlier. One of the assets that can be used for this are some billboards, and for the pillars I use ducts or commercial lights. Here I also made the slope to make it just a tiny bit more interesting. Even though I won't be making this functional today, it is still important to properly configure this intersection so that I know the exact dimensions of it before making the curves and surfaces. It was painful and it took quite a while, but I wanted each direction to be its own road, to form a median that doesn't break at intersections. But the game was not having it. it always created this triangle of voids. It took me more than an hour in the end. So, now that I have the intersection sorted out, I can move on to the curves. These mainly help with rounding the edges and covering the edges of surfaces. Now I'm coming back to the entrance, as I said when building this one, because I really don't like how it looks. For such a demand structure, you need the entrance to be way more grand. So I'm going back to my original plan for it, even though that means precise positioning of many ducts. I landed on the same building as before, but turned it the other way. Don't have the pillars sticking out, as I'll be building my own to support the way bigger roof made up of horizontal pillars. To make the roof nicer and make it fit more with the overall style of the towers, I lined the edge with these ducts. The shiny metal just fits way better and also better reflects how it's in real life. And finally, the pillars. I also made them out of ducts and spaced them way further apart than they were before, so I can make a drop-off location under the roof for all the important guests that would be going here. And speaking about the drop-off location, let's lay down the curbs for it. There won't be an actual road here, because we won't have any vehicles going here in the game, but it will be differentiated by using different styling. And with that, we can get into the detailing timelapse, where I'll detail all of the plazas here by adding a bunch of surfaces, props and trees, and also some custom lighting. That is why I didn't want to have lamps on the access roads. However, it was not all as smooth sailing as it might have seemed from the timelapse. Sometimes I had to redo some things I didn't like, and one of the things I didn't like was the plaza. The trees just weren't dense enough, so I did more of them and switched to lindens, which are a bit more substantial than the palms. Next problem was that the space between the water bit and the road was just too empty, so I ended up extending the whole thing. Even though it looks much better now, I think it could still be improved. But I'll leave it for now and maybe return to this place once I gather more plaza making skills. Even though I won't be covering Kota Nerang in a thick layer of stain decals like I do in Monteverde, they still have their place. I'll just be using them more sparsely and sunk it into the ground, so that they have more faded appearance. And one of the last touches before giving some attention to the roof, which is still just a grey slab, is to put some ads here. After all, it's a mall. There are no ads on the real one, but I think it fits here. The roof I'm decorating with solar panels, large industrial AC units and vents, and as I do that, I'm gonna wrap up the episode. So thank you for watching, and if you like the build, consider liking or subscribing to see how Kota Nerang will expand in the future. This has been my biggest and most complex project so far. The Petronas towers themselves are spliced together from 1200 assets, and it all took over 25 hours to build. So every view, like and subscribe massively helps with motivating me to continue building this kind of stuff and making it into videos for you. But with that, take care, stay tuned for the next one and enjoy the cinematics. Bye bye.